of Native American, East Asian Native American. There's a small segment on chromosome 6, a segment on chromosome 8, and my largest segment of 11 point something centimorgans is on chromosome 11. I'm going to go to my last slide here, but there are several things I want to say about it. And these are the triangulated groups that I mentioned earlier. Triangulated matches, if there was ever any doubt in this room from the indirect evidence of the tax list, the other county records that I gave you, whether there's a connection here, or even any doubt about the Y-DNA, because I have had people say, oh, I don't believe in that DNA business, in terms of one of the Birchfield descendants told me that she just didn't believe it. So anyway, with triangulated matches, there can be no doubt, because it's the same chromosome, the same segment, the same start location, the same end location, and it all equals the same ancestor. And there are several triangulated groups here. It's kind of like the icing on the cake. Believe me, any one-to-one match is a great match. It really is, and you can't dispute that at all. But it is kind of like the icing on the cake to see a triangulated group. I would like to point out that there's a good mix of triangulated relationships here. For instance, the first entry up here for chromosome 5 is Uncle Pete, FR. You see, I'm calling him Uncle Pete now, and Daleen Corley and myself. Uncle Pete is descended from Joseph's wife, number 1. Daleen is descended from Joseph's wife, number 2. And I'm descended from his love, Mary.
The princess.
Well, we're getting there. So we have a good mix here. There's one of us from each of these relationships that share this identical segment on this chromosome. Gives me goosebumps to think about it. Something else I want to say is you see Uncle Pete here over and over and over and over and over. He's my oldest tester, Birchfield tester. He's 80 years old. So there really could be something to test the oldest members of your family. Get that, because of division. It goes down. So Pete is the Honorable Floyd G. Rogers. He's a retired Chancery Court judge in Crawford County. Crawford County sits directly across the Arkansas River from Sebastian County. By Google Maps, Adam Alfred Gann lived not less than 35 and not more than 40 miles from where several of his Birchfield half-siblings and other persons from Jefferson County settled at Natural Dam on Lee's Creek. And Mary, I gave you a head up about that yesterday, because you have both Rogers and Gann names at Lee's Creek in Crawford County during this period. You're probably tied in with these Rogers. Okay? We'll investigate that later. Having relatives near may be, and this is pure speculation, cannot say, but it may be possible why Adam Alfred moved on down to Sebastian County instead of staying in Missouri with his other Ganns. Those Ganns in Missouri, we know that they were Jane Susanna's family. A lot of Ignatius Nathan descendants up there, right? Okay. So we don't know. Maybe it influenced it, maybe it didn't. But it might have also influenced why William Vineyard knew as much as he did to be able to tell Frank in 1908. Maybe he thought Frank already knew the Birchfield surname. And all that Frank needed was a first name, and it was either John or Joe. Well, now, what I pick up from John or Joe is that there were two men in Mary's life, possibly a stepfather type figure or someone else. At one time, it was theorized that maybe Johann Bowman. I don't know if Johann, I ran into a record that said he was frequently called John. So we can investigate that. It would have been nice, though, if William had at least casually mentioned the Birchfield name to me when I found that record. But look how much fun Bill and Gary and I, and a whole passel of others, would have missed over the last 20 years of working on finding a father for Adam Alfred Gann and proving children for Mary. We wanted to give some children to Mary, didn't we? I want to call your attention to the bottom down here where it says a definition of a persistent segment. A segment is normally divided roughly in half, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, as it is passed down generation to generation. A persistent segment is one that is inherited intact over generations, at least 2 generations. It usually does not get passed down into a 3rd generation, but it gets passed down intact. It doesn't change. It doesn't divide. This is a persistent segment here. And the persistent segment, this last triangulated group on chromosome 11, includes Uncle Pete. It includes these last 2, I should have said, Nori, and it includes me. And we have this grouping. This is also the Native American, East Asian Native American segment. So the Birchfield descendants carry the same East Asian Native American segment that 23andMe identified for me. What is true for me genetically on this chromosome is true for them as well. So we have this. This goes right back to Joseph Birchfield. So now we get this idea that that paper trail is not wrong. Those family stories are not wrong. All of those 13, 14 descendants who filed Dawes and Eastern Cherokee claims, they weren't wrong. They knew they had Indian in their family. They were grandchildren. The last entry down here is Uncle Pete, it's me, and it's my grandson Kyle. Now my son Matt fits in here as well, but I didn't include him here. But I'm going to mention him because I have a persistent segment that I have passed down to my son and to my grandson, and it is this Native American segment. And they inherited it intact. And to have it passed to my grandson, I think is quite remarkable, because this is something that the 3 of us share that is uniquely Joseph. It's my grandson's 5th great-grandfather, and it's uniquely Joseph. And it feels like a gift given thrice over from an ancestor who liked to do things his way. And this Cherokee princess thanks him for that. And I thank you for being attentive. I wish I could have done some things better, but thank you so much for your interest and attention. I do have one more slide that I'm going to leave up, and we have Birchfield and Gann relatives. This is Robert Birchfield. This is Wilson Greenberry Birchfield. I have their Y DNA. This is Elijah Holloway Birchfield. I have his descendants' autosomal DNA. This is Margaret Catherine Bean, or she married a Bean, Margaret Catherine Gann, who married a Bean. And she looks an awful lot like her Birchfield cousin who lived just about 40 miles down the road, doesn't she? Wouldn't you say? Of course, we all know we really can't use pictures to confirm relationships, but once you know what relationships are, pictures are pretty nice to have. This is my ancestor, Frank Gann, and everybody always says he looks so Indian. This is Robert Birchfield, the oldest son. And this is William Vineyard Gann. William Vineyard wrote the letter. This is an earlier picture of him, and to the letter to my ancestor, in which I had so much information, but for so many years didn't know it. Didn't know it. Thank you.
That's a good time.